There was a famous sex flick in the 1970s called Emmanuel. Obviously I was far too young to actually watch this sordid X-rated filth. The very idea. But the basic premise was Emmanuel went around screwing everyone for entirely self-serving reasons. Ladies and gents, I give you the 21st century version. Emmanuel Macron, whose political modus operandi seems identical, because it appears his desperate need to look like a hard man for the French vote at home has all but condemned Britain and the EU to a no-deal Brexit. There's a beautiful, if deeply malevolent, political symmetry to a manipulative French president effectively ruining the chances of Britain leaving the EU in a decent, grown-up manner. Because, lest we forget, it was a similarly self-serving French president, Charles de Gaulle, who tried twice to stop us joining in the first place. Partly because de Gaulle similarly needed to look every inch the Gallic tough guy at home, and partly because he really didn't like Britain. Sound a bit familiar? Plus car change. There's no doubt that Macron has deliberately poisoned the Brexit EU well for entirely self-serving domestic political reasons which shine a 10,000 watt spotlight on the lie at the heart of the EU. When push comes to shove, all politicians put national interests first, dumping the EU dream and all it is supposed to stand for without missing a beat. Actually, in fairness, he's not really putting French interests first. He's putting Emmanuel Macron's interests first. On Wednesday, Britain and the EU were stumbling to an uneasy but workable truce on a Brexit deal. Yes, it was clumsy. And yes, it tasted very much of fudge. And yes, both sides would definitely have much to moan about. But it was an agreement and greased the wheels for the rest of a Brexit deal to fall into place. Enter Macron and his rampantly disingenuous fishing-related telephone campaign to foment anti-Brexit sentiment and pile pressure on soft Michel Barnier. By the early hours of Thursday, reasonable delegates who had been on the cusp of a deal were suddenly screaming down the corridors. Brexit was off and a no deal so much closer to being a reality. And this is not about EU politics now but French ones. Macron will face Marine Le Pen in the 2022 elections, a woman not known for her wishy-washy stance on, well, anything. And the president has to look macho to appeal to her fan base. So Mr. Macron has realized, perhaps a touch late, that the French fishing industry faces tough times. It may even be decimated. Many of the northern French ports take 3/4 of their catch from British waters, and any deal or no deal will either be difficult or catastrophic for these communities and their votes. Tough times maybe, but you won't find a massive outpouring of grief in Britain's fishing ports, whose own decimation and subsequent joblessness was considered a fair price to pay for UK membership of the EEC. Remainer critics never tire of pointing out that the UK fishing industry accounts for less than 0.2% of the economy. Well, of course it does. Now, back in the 1970s and 1980s, the EU forced British fishermen to destroy their own industry in the interests of, yes, you guessed it, in the interests of a level playing field. Our chaps, already facing crippling quotas, were offered EU cash bribes to destroy their vessels so the French and Dutch and Spanish could catch more fish. Some Romaners will tell you we'll never get our fleet back. That's clearly rubbish. We have to get our fleet back. Of course, Mr. Macron knows full well the correct EU supporting position would have been to consider the needs of the entire 27 nations, not just those of France. Think Austria or Hungary or any of the landlocked countries of the former Czechoslovakia care a sprat about fishing or Britain's 200-mile limit? Of course they don't, but Macron doesn't give a stuff. He feels the pressing need to wave his French willy around to show what a tough guy he is. As if we hadn't already started to place him dangerously close the Napoleon box anyway after his insane plans to make taking phone footage of police brutality a crime. Not 100% sure what the French for police state is, but I'll have a stab at let policy. I'm not a man who usually goes a bundle on riots, political or otherwise, but this weekend I had nothing but admiration for that strange Gallic compulsion to set something on fire in the middle of the street to make a point, which, oddly enough, is something Brexit Britain will have to get used to, because deal or no deal it won't be easy on this side of the channel, and yes, angry French fishermen will block ports and set things on fire for weeks and perhaps months. But no one ever said this was going to be easy. And there is of course a fabulous irony for Britain's Remain lovies who fawned over Macron months ago as a hero of the anti-Brexit lobby. They now find themselves in the hilarious position of having to recognize that if the UK leaves without a deal, the Remainers' ultimate nightmare scenario, it will be pretty much the strange little Frenchman's fault.